The sun had barely crested the edge of the Okefenokee swamp when Ranger Ethan Delgado's radio crackled to life. Code Red, Sector 9. Wild horse under attack. Possible python involved. Immediate response required. Ethan froze mid-sip of coffee, the bitter liquid sloshing in his tin mug. He'd heard all sorts of things during his 12 years patrolling these wetlands. Lost hikers, alligator bites, even a drunk fisherman stuck up a tree. But nothing like this. A python attacking a Mustang. He reached for the radio. Ranger Delgado responding, en route, ETA 15. Notify Dr. Green and tell Ellie to gear up. He grabbed his emergency kit and headed for the truck, boots thudding against the worn wood floor of the ranger station. The morning air outside was thick and sticky, already buzzing with cicadas. Spanish moss swayed in the humid breeze. On his desk behind him, a thick wildlife report from the Federal Bureau of Conservation remained open, the headline still fresh in his mind. Python bivittatus, population surge in southern Okefenokee, urgent containment required. The numbers had been staggering. Heat detection satellite data showed a population doubling in under 2 years. Clutch sizes were increasing, range expanding. And now, horses? This wasn't an isolated incident. This was something bigger. Ellie Shaw was waiting for him at the trailhead, zipping her tactical vest with brisk efficiency. Her field pack was already slung over one shoulder. "You heard?" she asked, climbing onto her ATV. "Yeah, let's move." As they started up the path, Ethan glanced sideways. "This time, don't let your emotions get the better of you." She shot him a quick glare. "Last time I did, that bear cub survived. Or did you forget?" He almost smiled, but kept his eyes on the trail. "Just don't make me drag you out of the swamp again." The deeper they pushed into the wetland, the more the silence pressed in. The sun filtered through dense canopies, dappling the trail with shifting shadows. Water pooled in unexpected pockets. The ground grew slick, familiar to them both, yet something felt wrong. Ethan raised a hand. "Stop!" In the muddy ground ahead, a long, smooth groove had been carved through the earth. Too wide for a gator, too deliberate for anything natural. "That's a drag trail," he muttered. "Python." Ellie knelt to inspect a tuft of reddish-brown hair stuck to a broken reed. Horse hair. The air shifted, foul and hot. A musky scent clung low to the ground. "I hate that smell," Ellie whispered, hand resting instinctively on the tranquilizer pouch at her belt. And then the sound came. A scream. Not human, not quite animal either. It was raw, piercing, full of pain and something deeper, terror. They sprinted the last few yards, branches slapping against their arms. When they burst through the sawgrass, the sight before them rooted both in place. In the shallow marsh, a Mustang Mare, chestnut-colored, coat slick with sweat, stood shaking violently. Her front legs were wrapped in the crushing coils of a python nearly 20 feet long. The snake's body flexed with slow, merciless pressure, its head hidden beneath the loops of muscle. Ethan's pulse slammed against his temples. "Oh my God," Ellie breathed. But then, behind the mare, nestled in the tall grass, stood a foal, wobbly on spindly legs, still damp from birth, crying out. Ethan's breath caught. The mare wasn't just trapped, she was protecting her baby. A memory surfaced, uninvited but vivid. A reddish mare from his childhood, from his mother's small horse rescue in southern New Mexico. That mare's name had been Willow, strong, gentle, fiercely maternal. She'd once stood between a starving coyote and her injured colt, refusing to move even after taking a bite to her own shoulder. Looking into this mare's eyes now, Ethan felt the same quiet fire, the same defiance. He whispered, without thinking, Willow! The snake shifted. The coils tightened. Willow lurched, front legs buckling. But she didn't fall. Instead, she reared back just enough to stomp one heavy hoof down, striking blindly. The python's body jerked slightly, then resumed its suffocating hold. Ethan grabbed his radio. "This is Delgado. We've located the Mustang. She's alive, but barely. We've got a foal, no more than a day or two old, behind her. Immediate backup and medical response needed." "Copy that. Dr. Green is 5 minutes out," the dispatcher replied. "We don't have 5, Ellie said, scanning the clearing. Then they saw it. The python's head emerging, tongue flicking, eyes locking onto the trembling foal. "If it turns on the baby," Ellie whispered. She started forward, but Ethan held her back, firm. "Wait," he said sharply. "If we move now, we risk her life. If it tightens, Ethan, we can't just stand here. We're timing this." Willow's eyes locked with Ethan's for a split second. They were wild, yes, but lucid. Knowing, somehow, trusting. "She's buying time," Ethan muttered. "She's not just surviving, she's defending her baby." He raised his radio again. "And if we don't act fast, she'll die trying." Willow's legs were trembling now, muscles spasming beneath her soaked coat as the python's relentless grip tightened. Foam frothed at her mouth. Her breathing came in shallow, wheezing bursts. But still, she refused to collapse. She stayed upright, because behind her, hidden in the sawgrass, her newborn foal still lived. Ellie Shaw dropped to her knees, yanking open a black case filled with heavy-duty gear. "We've got a problem," she said, voice clipped with urgency. "This python's bigger than any we've modeled for. These coils, Ethan, I don't think the standard cone will hold." Ethan was already pulling gear from the back of the ATV. "We're out of time, Ellie. We make it work. Where's Green?" 2 minutes out." She snapped the tranquilizer pole into place. "That's a long damn time." The snake moved again, shifting its massive body to gain better leverage over Willow's chest. The mare reared, striking out with her hooves, wild, desperate blows. One caught the python near its head, but the effect was minimal. It only enraged the beast. Ethan saw it then. Willow wasn't just flailing. Each movement was timed, calculated. She angled her body to keep the snake from coiling higher. She shifted to block the predator's reach toward her foal, and when the coils adjusted, she used her weight to unbalance them. She was in agony, but still thinking. "She's protecting him," Ellie said, eyes locked on the mare. "Every move she makes, it's not for her." "Then we owe her one hell of a rescue," Ethan said. A low growl rolled through the grass. Ethan froze. The python's head was now visible, its black eyes locked onto the foal's trembling frame in the grass. A slow shift began. Its body loosened just slightly from Willow's legs, then began to redirect forward. "Damn it, it's going for the baby," Ellie hissed. She started to run, but Ethan grabbed her wrist. "Number. If we rush it now, it'll panic, might crush her or lunge for him." Ellie's voice cracked. "So we just wait?" "For the right second, that's all we need." From the trees, brush cracked, and Dr. Noah Green burst through, lugging 2 metal cases. His lab coat was soaked with sweat, glasses fogged. "I saw it from the ridge," he said, gasping. "That thing's a monster." "You got sedatives?" Ethan asked. 3 darts loaded, fast-acting mix, but if we hit the wrong muscle, it could reflex and kill her, Ellie finished. The python began its shift again, head tilting toward the foal. It flicked its tongue, sensing the scent of something young and vulnerable. Then Willow did something none of them expected. She called out. A low, rumbling nicker, soft and patterned. Not a panicked scream, a signal. From the grass, the foal froze. Then, slowly, awkwardly, it crouched lower into the reeds, out of sight. "She's talking to him," Ellie whispered. "She's telling him to hide." "I've seen elephants do that," Green murmured. "But horses? This is something else." Willow reared again, then collapsed onto her side, bringing the coils with her, but dragging the snake's head low to the ground. "That's the window," Ethan shouted. Ellie lunged with the oversized cone, gritting her teeth as she aimed it over the python's head. "Just 2 more feet, come on." Willow twisted, one last time, slamming her weight sideways. The python's thick head slipped right into the cone. Ellie jammed it down hard and locked it. "Got it!" she cried. The snake convulsed, its powerful body thrashing. The impact shook the ground. Willow shrieked in pain as the coils tightened one final time. "Green, now!" Ethan yelled. The vet didn't hesitate. He drove a tranquilizer dart straight into the thick muscle near the snake's midsection. The python shuddered, its movements beginning to slow. But it would take time. Long, unbearable minutes. They began working the coils free, one by one. But each segment was as heavy as wet rope. Ethan's hands shook as he heaved one loop back. Willow groaned, her legs twitching uncontrollably. "Keep her breathing," Green said, crouching at her head. He listened to her lungs with a stethoscope. "Heart rate's dropping, her oxygen's low, we've got minutes." Another coil, then another. Ellie grunted as she wrenched the 5th loop off Willow's chest. "She's soaked through. We need water." "I've got saline spray in the med kit," Green replied, already moving. Ethan turned toward the sawgrass and saw the foal. The little creature had stood again and was inching forward, whimpering with every shaky step. "Stay back," Ethan said gently. But the foal didn't stop. Willow opened one eye, her breath hitched, and she called again. That same soft nicker. The foal let out a tiny sound and pressed his body against hers. Ellie paused, stunned. "He's not scared." "No," Ethan said. "He trusts her, just like she trusted us." The final coils loosened. Green slid a blanket under Willow's legs as they gently pulled the massive weight off her. Her limbs collapsed to the ground, too swollen to support her. "She's in circulatory shock," Green said. "We need to elevate, cool her, and prep transport now." The foal refused to leave her side. Ethan crouched and gently stroked its neck. "You're a tough little guy." The foal nudged his shoulder, already wobbling, but determined. "What's your name, huh?" Ethan asked softly. The foal blinked at him with curious brown eyes. "Dusty?" Ethan said. "You look like a Dusty." Ellie stood slowly, chest heaving from exertion. "She didn't just survive. She fought," Ethan said, "and she won." As they loaded the sedated python into a containment unit and prepared Willow for emergency transport, a hawk screamed overhead, its call sharp and echoing across the swamp. It wasn't over, but thanks to a mother's will and a baby's trust, they'd made it through the first battle. Ethan gripped the side rail of the wildlife transport trailer as it lurched over a bump in the swamp road, sending a fresh wave of panic through his chest. Inside, Willow lay on her side, her breathing still ragged, her flanks rising and falling with painful effort. Dusty, the foal, was pressed close against her, refusing to move even when the vet techs tried to separate them for safety. "She's unstable," Dr. Noah Green muttered from the corner of the trailer, one hand on Willow's neck, the other adjusting the flow of IV fluids. "Heart rate's weak. We need to get her to the center now or we're going to lose her." Ellie was at the wheel of the ATV pulling the trailer, driving faster than terrain allowed, her eyes locked on the narrow path ahead. The swamp around them blurred past, tangled trees, black water, birds scattering at their approach. Every jolt of the trailer felt like an insult to Willow's already traumatized body. "Dusty's going to be a problem," Green said, nodding toward the foal. "He won't leave her side." "Then we don't separate them," Ethan said. "He stays with her. He's the only thing keeping her calm." The vet hesitated, then nodded. "Fine. But if she goes into cardiac arrest, I'll need space to work." "Then we'll make it work," Ethan replied, "no matter what." They arrived at St. Mary's Wildlife Rescue Center just after noon. The facility, a hybrid between a rural vet hospital and a field research lab, sat on a modest rise above the marshlands. Staff rushed out as the trailer backed into the unloading zone. Among them was Dr. Lydia Monroe, the center's lead equine specialist, known for her tenacity and near-miraculous saves. "Get her into stall 3, now," Monroe ordered, striding forward with a surgical mask dangling from one ear and gloves already snapped on. "We'll need full diagnostics. Ultrasound, thermal imaging, the works. That python may have crushed capillaries we won't catch with the naked eye." "Already running fluids," Green reported. "Administered sedatives, but we kept her conscious for the trip." Monroe gave a sharp nod. "Good. We'll sedate fully once she's secure." Willow was carefully lifted from the trailer with a 6-person sling and maneuvered onto a padded gurney. Dusty trotted beside her, wide-eyed and shaking but determined. Every time someone tried to guide him away, he squealed and bolted back to her side, nuzzling her face. "We're going to need to keep them together," Monroe said, assessing the situation. "Separate them now, and she might go into shock." "She already is," Green said quietly. Inside the surgical stall, machines buzzed to life. Monroe and her team worked with clinical precision, shaving Willow's legs, applying ultrasound gel, inserting IV ports. Monitors beeped, one showing dangerously low oxygen saturation. "She's worse than I thought," Monroe muttered, scanning the imaging screen. No fractures, but significant muscle trauma and restricted blood flow in both forelegs. "We've got maybe 12 hours to restore proper circulation before we risk permanent damage." Outside the glass observation window, Ethan and Ellie watched in tense silence. Neither spoke until Ellie finally broke it. "She trusted us," she said, voice low. "We owe her everything now." Ethan nodded. "And we're not letting her down." Monroe stepped out 20 minutes later, peeling off her gloves with a weary sigh. "We've stabilized her for now, but the next 12 to 24 hours are critical, and that foal, he won't eat unless she's within reach." "I'll stay with them," Ellie offered immediately. Monroe raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Ellie nodded. "They need familiarity, and frankly, so do I." The center's team began constructing a temporary enclosure inside the surgical ward, 2 stalls connected by a wide gate that allowed Willow and Dusty to remain close. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to keep them both calm. By sunset, Willow was sleeping lightly, her breathing deeper, more regular. Dusty lay curled beside her, his tiny body twitching occasionally in sleep. Ethan sat on a bench just outside the stall, staring through the slats. "You know what's crazy?" he said to Ellie, who was perched beside him. "She coordinated with us. She gave us that python." "She saved herself," Ellie replied. "But yeah, she let us help." A long silence settled between them before Ethan spoke again. "You remember that Mustang sanctuary up north? The one they tried building in Colorado?" "Yeah," Ellie said. "Never got off the ground." "Well, what if we did something like that here?" he said. "For cases like this. A place that isn't just a clinic. Somewhere wild horses can actually heal, on their terms. Ellie turned to him, surprised. "You're serious?" He met her gaze. "After today? Yeah, dead serious." In the stall, Willow shifted slightly, her leg jerking. Dusty stirred, then nuzzled closer, and for the first time since the python attack, Ethan saw something in the mare's face. Something quiet, but unmistakable. Hope. 2 weeks after the attack, Willow and Dusty were no longer just survivors. They were symbols. Their story had traveled far beyond the swamp. First, through the Rescue Center's newsletter, then onto social media, and finally splashed across national headlines: Mustang Mare battles python to protect newborn, and Miracle in the Marsh, a wild horse's will to survive. But Willow didn't know she was famous. And even if she had, she wouldn't have cared. What she did care about was her foal, the way the sun felt on her back in the mornings, and the strange new enclosure she was learning to call home. The semi-wild paddock behind St. Mary's Wildlife Rescue Center was 10 acres of carefully designed terrain, mud flats, scrub trees, and even a small marsh-fed creek. The goal was to simulate her natural habitat while allowing for medical monitoring and recovery. No fences, just boundary ropes and cameras. Willow had taken to it immediately. Dr. Lydia Monroe stood at the observation window on the third morning and shook her head in disbelief. "She's not just adapting," she said to Ethan and Ellie. "She's thriving." Dusty followed his mother everywhere. Still wobbly, but growing stronger, he mimicked her every move. When she drank, he drank. When she froze at a sound, so did he. And when she showed him how to cross shallow water, she did it with such patience that even Monroe paused her notes, quietly saying, "She's teaching him." Ellie had begun documenting the pair full-time. Footage from her drone revealed things scientists rarely got to witness. A wild Mustang not just surviving, but actively parenting with precision, awareness, and strategy. "She blocks his path when snakes are near," Ellie said, showing Ethan a slowed-down clip. "She circles him when birds of prey fly overhead. That's not instinct. That's education." The footage spread faster than they expected. Wildlife biologists began reaching out from around the country, intrigued not only by Willow's recovery, but by her apparent communication and problem-solving skills. The video of her stepping between a ranger and her foal during feeding rounds reached over 1 million views in less than 48 hours. That's when Dr. Robert King arrived. A federal wildlife management officer with 3 decades in the field, King looked more like a retired cattleman than a scientist. Gray beard, broad shoulders, a voice that carried without trying. He reviewed footage for 3 hours in silence, then asked to observe the mare in person. "She's showing signs of selective trust," he finally said. "Which is good, but it can backfire. If she gets too familiar with humans, she won't survive out there. We need to test her." Ellie looked up sharply. "You mean provoke her?" "No," King said calmly. "We test her instincts. A stranger enters the enclosure. If she approaches, she fails. If she stays alert, distances herself, and protects the foal, she passes." Monroe hesitated. "And if she fails?" "She stays here permanently." That night, the air inside the break room was thick with tension. Even Dusty, curled against Willow's flank outside, seemed more still than usual. "She's ready," Monroe said finally, looking at the others. "We have to believe that." Ethan didn't respond right away. He just stared through the window. The mare was standing near the creek, her reflection shimmering beneath her. She seemed to sense something. Her ears rotated, her eyes fixed ahead. "She's always known how to survive," he said softly, "but now she knows how to teach it." The next morning, the test began at sunrise. The stranger, a field tech from out of state, entered quietly, no eye contact, no sudden movements. Willow and Dusty were grazing near the far end of the enclosure. Within seconds, Willow lifted her head. She snorted, ears flicked, then turned her body sideways between Dusty and the intruder. She didn't bolt, she didn't approach. She watched. When Dusty wandered forward, Willow nudged him back with her nose. Then she turned again, walking them both toward the shade of the trees, slow and deliberate. She never took her eyes off the stranger, not once. Dr. King stood with folded arms. She's still wild, she passed. Ellie exhaled like she'd been holding her breath the entire time. Thank God. Monroe smiled faintly. She's not just ready, she's a better version of herself now. Later that day, Monroe gathered the team. She's cleared for release, she said. We'll begin preparing the transport by end of week. No one spoke right away. Then Ellie, voice quiet, said, It's what we've worked for. Ethan looked outside, where Dusty galloped in circles under Willow's watchful gaze. She trusted us, he said. Now we trust her back. That night, beneath a sky full of stars, Willow lay beside her foal. The wind rustled through the cypress. Somewhere, deep in the marsh, another Mustang called out. She lifted her head and answered. The morning of Willow's release dawned soft and golden, with mist rising off the marshes like a blessing. The rescue center was quiet, almost reverent, as staff moved with hushed urgency to prepare for what had once seemed impossible, returning Willow and her foal, Dusty, to the wild. Ethan stood beside the transport trailer, checking the ramp bolts for the third time. Ellie walked the perimeter with a clipboard, double-checking the tracking collar that would fall off naturally in 30 days. Dr. Monroe supervised the sedative dosage, light enough to calm Willow during the drive, gentle enough not to linger once they arrived. Dusty had grown considerably. His legs, once shaky and frail, were now sturdy. His eyes held a wildness Ethan hadn't seen before, a spark, unbroken and confident. You ready for this? Ellie asked, stepping beside Ethan. He looked toward the enclosure. Willow stood tall and calm in the center, ears forward, eyes scanning the tree line. Beside her, Dusty nuzzled her shoulder. Yeah, Ethan said, she is. The drive was 2 miles to the reintroduction site, a quiet glade tucked between cypress groves and open marsh, not far from where Willow's herd had last been tracked. A ranger team had verified that the herd was nearby just the day before. Willow and Dusty were loaded into the trailer without resistance. If anything, Willow seemed to understand. She moved carefully, purposefully. Dusty followed, hesitant only until her tail brushed his cheek. At the release site, the team moved slowly. No noise, no sudden movements. Monroe approached the trailer and placed a hand on its side, as if steadying herself as much as the mare within. We'll open the ramp, she said, then we wait. The gate swung open. Willow stood still inside the trailer for a full minute. Then she stepped down. First one hoof, then another, until she stood in the marsh grass. Dusty followed, his movements slower, more cautious. Together they stood facing the tree line. A distant whinny broke the silence. Willow lifted her head, ears pricked. Then a second call, closer. Ellie pointed toward a break in the trees. A line of shapes, horses, half in shadow, emerged slowly. Ethan recognized a few from photos. The dominant mare, a piebald with a scar over one eye. 2 yearlings, an older stallion at the rear. Willow let out a sound none of them had heard before, a rising, melodic call, longer than a whinny, almost like a song. The herd responded instantly, moving forward. Dusty danced beside her, startled but excited. She brushed her muzzle over his back, calming him. Then they walked. Not rushed, not fearful, deliberate, regal. The herd met them halfway, a blur of nuzzling, sniffing, and soft nickers. Dusty stood wide-eyed as a curious yearling stepped toward him, and for the first time in his life he didn't hide behind his mother. He stepped forward. "She's home," Ellie whispered, tears in her voice. Ethan nodded, and she brought him home too. Over the next few weeks, GPS data showed a clear pattern. Willow had reintegrated with the herd. But more than that, she had taken a leadership role. She led the group along careful paths away from areas known for python activity. On 2 occasions, she brought injured herd members close to ranger outposts and lingered nearby until help arrived. "She's teaching them," Monroe said, reviewing the data. "She's not just surviving. She's reshaping how the herd interacts with the world." Rangers began calling her the matron of the marsh. Visitors asked about her at the center, where a small plaque had been placed beneath a framed photo. Willow, survivor. Mother. Guardian. Dusty grew fast. He shadowed Willow at first, but slowly began to explore on his own, especially with other foals. The last GPS ping before the collar detached showed him galloping through a shallow creek, water splashing around his legs, the sun glinting off his coat. 1 month to the day after release, a group of hikers reported a sighting near the southern edge of the refuge. A bay mare with a crescent-shaped mark on her neck stood beneath a cypress, watching as a group of foals played nearby. When a young colt wandered too close to a snake trail, she stepped forward and snorted, calling him back. The hikers swore she made the foals repeat the route, twice, until she was satisfied they'd learned the difference between safe ground and danger. "She's passing it on," Ethan said when he heard the story. "Everything she learned, she's giving to the next generation." Willow had returned to the wild, but she had brought something back with her, an awareness, a memory, a bridge between instinct and intelligence. She had survived not because she was lucky, but because she had learned, trusted, fought, and loved. And she taught her foal to do the same. Sometimes the wild doesn't just reclaim its own, it rises stronger than before. And Willow proved love makes warriors of us all.